Good morning. It's true, my hair's a little flat today. It's another beautiful morning here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It is a Wednesday, hump day. Is it Wednesday? Fuck, what's today? Yeah, it is holy shit, it's already Wednesday. Guys, coming a little fast. So today is Wednesday, another great, fantastic day. It's gorgeous outside. It is now officially fall in Minnesota. So every single night, I've gotten cold. It's like the perfect temperature for sleeping in because it's like in the upper 50s, lower 60s. So it's cold in my apartment. But if you go outside, you have to get like sleeves on. And I was thinking the other day, I was like, I did not enjoy my first like 70-degree day until like May. It had to have been May when I enjoyed my first 70-degree day here in Minnesota. And for it to be over like that, where summer is no longer now, because we are in fall. It's just not worth it, guys. Just don't do it. Unless you're a goddamn Eskimo, don't fucking do it. It's Stockholm Syndrome is the reason why these people stay here, okay? That's the only reason I can think of, so there we go. Well, another great round of NPR here.
To make sure FEMA has the money to operate. And right now, probably turn our attentions to Tropical Storm Dorian and what it's about to do in Puerto Rico.
All right, former FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate joining us. Thanks so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, David.
More coming up here in Morning Edition. One of our lead stories, Minnesota DFL Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is conducting public meetings in her district as news swirls around her personal life. Details on this at nprnews.org.
I'm so tired of
Forecast
hearing about her.
coming up next here on NPR News. It's 8:19.
Programming on Minnesota Public Radio is supported by our listeners and by Catholic Charities of St. Paul and Minneapolis, working together to solve poverty, create opportunity, and advocate for justice in the community. Ways to help at cctwincities.org.
Fair skies, 59 degrees at the Twin Cities International Airport. I'm Kathy Worzer. Glad to have you with us here on Morning Edition. We have a couple of traffic incidents here, actually 3 to tell you about. We were doing just fine in terms of traffic here today, but 3 accidents. One's in Brooklyn Park, 252 southbound at 81st Avenue North. The other one's in Fridley, 694 westbound at East River Road. And a third is in Coates, Minnesota, 52 northbound around 170th Street East to the south. Here in the Twin Cities, let's talk about the weather here quickly. It's not bad. 57, high today, 75, and sunny. A little less wind today. Tomorrow's high, close to 80.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from EBSCO, committed to providing analytics and insights to libraries that enable smarter collection development, improve workflows, and greater user experiences. Learn more at ebsco.com. Visiting Angels, providing caregivers assisting adults at home in bathing, dressing, meals, and light housework nationwide. Visiting Angels, America's choice in senior home care. Learn more at 1-800-365-4189. And Charles Schwab.
So supposedly, Ilhan Omar stole another woman's man. It was noted in some divorce papers, I guess, filed recently.
NPR News, I'm David Green.
And I'm Rachel Martin. North Carolina is opening a new front in the war against nicotine. Last spring, the Attorney General Josh Stein sued the country's most popular maker of e-cigarettes, Juul. And yesterday, the AG filed suit against another 8 companies who make similar products. Stein accuses the companies of aggressively targeting children and teens in their marketing. Electric Tobacconist, one of the companies named in the lawsuit, released a statement yesterday saying, quote, "We absolutely affirm that these products don't belong in the hands of children." But Attorney General Stein says the flavors offered by vaping companies make it clear who they're targeting.
bubblegum, fudge, French toast, gummy bear, unicorn. These are all names that are designed to appeal to young people. In fact,
go fuck yourself. No,
ask young people. There's survey data that shows why do you vape, and flavors are the number one reason why they vape. And Congress passed a law saying that tobacco manufacturers could no longer produce flavored cigarettes. There only remains tobacco flavored and menthol flavored cigarettes because we know that these flavors are what hook kids to nicotine.
Of course, the position that Juul has taken and other e-cigarette companies is that their motivation is to reduce the number of American adults who smoke cigarettes, that this is a way to wean them off of nicotine. And you're saying that intentionally or not, they are creating new nicotine users.
Well, one, I don't believe them. But one of these companies I sued, Eon Smoke, has an Instagram photo that they put out there of their product, and it's a USB drive just like Juul. It looks like that.
That's what these mechanisms look like.
Exactly.
They look like USB drives that you could sneak into a classroom.
And put in a backpack, and frankly, most parents aren't going to have the first clue what it is. And what the picture is underneath it, the caption says, "Mom, it's a USB drive." That is expressly targeted to students, and I want to shut that practice down in my state.
Is there any difference between the suit that you put forward this week against these 8 companies and the suit you filed in the spring against Juul?
They're conceptually similar. Juul is the 800-pound gorilla. There are tens of thousands of North Carolinian teenagers addicted to nicotine who, but for Juul, would not be. And they have to help remedy that situation that they created.
The CDC recently linked one death to lung disease caused by vaping. So far, that's the only fatality linked directly to vaping. There may be other adverse effects, but is the science conclusive about the potential of fatalities as a result of vaping?
Well, it's the first known death, but the problem with these products, just as cigarettes, isn't that you take it and you die, although sadly this person in Illinois did. The concern is the long-term health implications. The amount of nicotine the teenagers get from vaping is substantially more than what they would get if they were smoking traditional cigarettes. Do not take that as an endorsement for kids to smoke regular cigarettes. They're incredibly addictive as well. But it just underscores how dangerous these drugs are, and the long-term lung damage, we have absolutely no idea. And there's an entire generation of teens that are essentially health guinea pigs for these vaping companies. It's inexcusable.
Are you trying to lay the groundwork for a new master settlement, like the one in the 90s that saw tobacco companies agree to pay more than $200 billion over 25 years?
I am doing everything in my power to prevent another generation of young people becoming addicted to nicotine. How we get there, I'm open to any manner of ideas. I believe the FDA should take much stronger action than it has to date. I appreciate their concern about this issue, but they need to translate that concern into action. I think Congress needs to take strong action, but I'm going to exercise my authority to the fullest to protect teenagers in North Carolina.
North Carolina Attorney General Josh Stein, thank you so much for your time.
Rachel, thanks so much.
And Wisconsin lawmakers.
It's just another way of the government trying to control our lives. No one is forcing. There was a beautiful woman who looked like she was straight from the 1970s. No one is forcing people to smoke these e-cigs. Nobody is, people are making these decisions on their own. It's just like, they talk about raising the age for, smoking to 21 and dumb shit like that. Get in the fucking road, motherfucker! Yeah, what the fuck you doing? Alright, sorry. Government's job is not to tell us what to put in our body, what we should and should not put in our body. We know what nicotine does. E-cigs, you just look at them and you should know that there's something wrong. You're producing so much goddamn smoke. You really don't know what's in them too awful much. I know it's vegetable oil or something. It's propylene glycosol and nicotine and then flavoring. From what I understand, your best risk to getting, opening her up to risk of disease is when you get those big honking ones. So those people that, do it professionally, where they make a cloud of smoke, that's a real cloud. It's huge. Those burn at a very high temperature. That's how they make so much smoke so quickly. And apparently that's when the carcinogens really start coming into play. So that's from what I've heard is I believe it's the temperature in which they are burned at. This is a main factor of it. There is no differentiating when they talk about vaping between people smoking an e-cig, just like the ones that look like cigarettes, and these big honking ones that look like they're, a goddamn spaceship blasting off.
Well, I mean, this is a relatively nascent thing. So I think probably a few hundred school districts are doing this, and we have 13,000 school districts in the United States. But I do think that police do take these things seriously. So there's one example that I've seen of a student who posted that he was going to shoot the professor for scheduling an early morning exam on Twitter. It seems to me to be an obvious joke, and the kid was arrested. So things like this do happen. But it's not just about law enforcement, right? So if you get flagged to your school district and to your principal, as a student, you get flagged as somebody who's a troublemaker, who's, potentially a school shooter or at risk of other kinds of violence. And that can have a lot of consequences for kids. It can lead to investigations. Your parents are probably brought into the mix. So, even a very harmless tweet can lead to consequences.
Do we have any sense of how effective these services are at reducing violence in schools?
None at all. We have, the companies that market these services will say we've identified, many instances of where we've prevented harm or violence from happening, but none of those stories have ever been audited, and there's certainly no systematic research indicating that these kinds of tools are effective. In other contexts where people have tried social media monitoring in order to identify threats, they have been found to be not effective. The Department of Homeland Security, for example, ran 5 pilot projects that we know of to vet visa applicants, right? People looking to come to the United States for asylum on fiancé visas, and their own assessment was that the social media monitoring really wasn't effective at identifying threats. So that's not the school system, but that's another context in which, social media monitoring has been tested.
Faiza Patel is co-director of the Liberty and National Security Program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU. The center found that monitoring tends to cluster within a few states. From the data they've been able to collect, it appears that schools in Texas, Illinois, Florida, and California have spent the most on the services. I'm Jed Kim, and that's Marketplace Tech.
Monitoring kids' Facebook.
This is APM.
Marketplace Tech is supported by MentorMate. Utilizing the technical expertise of Bulgaria, MentorMate is an alternative to traditional offshore custom software development at mentormate.com.
Coming up on Morning Edition on this Wednesday version, world, national, and regional news. It's 8:30.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. Forecasters say Tropical Storm Dorian could be near hurricane strength when it reaches Puerto Rico later today. Currently, Dorian is close to St. Croix with top sustained winds of about 60 miles per hour. Nick Russo with FEMA says President Trump has declared an emergency in Puerto Rico.
FEMA took a very aggressive stance for Dorian. It is the first system of the year, and we understand that the island is still very fragile.
Flooding and power outages are expected along with possible mudslides. It's been 2 years since Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. Officials say 30,000 homes on the island still have blue tarps on their roofs from that storm. The National Hurricane Center says Dorian could hit the east coast of Florida as a Category 2 hurricane late in the weekend. Deutsche Bank says it has the tax returns being sought by House Democrats related to President Trump's personal and business finances. Here's NPR's Ryan Lucas.
Deutsche Bank says in a letter filed in Federal Appeals Court in New York that it has in its possession tax returns that are sought by Congress. The public version of the letter doesn't reveal whose records the bank has. Now, Trump has sued to block the bank from handing over the records subpoenaed by the House Financial Services and Intelligence Committees, which are seeking financial records of the president, his children, and Trump's businesses.
The Dow was down 63 points in early trading on Wall Street. This is NPR News. It is NPR News in the Twin Cities. I'm Phil Picardi. State wildlife officials are taking steps to curb a fatal brain disease among the state's wild deer. The DNR has announced 2019 deer season regulations aimed at limiting the spread of chronic wasting disease. The agency plans to expand hunting opportunities and bag limits in areas where the disease has been found in wild deer. A DFL state lawmaker says he wants to protect Minnesotans from unexpected bills for air ambulance services. Representative John Hewitt of Rosemount plans to push legislation next year that would require hospitals to provide patients with information about how much air ambulances cost. Hewitt says patients transported by helicopter should not be surprised when they receive a bill that can reach tens of thousands of dollars.
Helicopter patients are usually critical care patients, and they get home and they open up the bill. It's one of the highest bills they have. They got a ground transport bill for, let's say, $2,000, but their helicopter bill is $40,000.
Hewitt outlined his proposal during a meeting with representatives of several air ambulance services that operate in the state. He plans to have a bill ready to go for the 2020 legislative session. The Vikings have taken the first steps to bring a Super Bowl back to U.S. Bank Stadium. The team has submitted a formal expression of interest in the league in hosting a third championship. Team spokesman Lester Bagley says a potential return would be nearly a decade away. Twin Cities hosted its first Super Bowl in 1992, and Bagley says the league liked what it saw from the Minneapolis 2018 game.
It was really a well-done, well-oiled machine, and business community, hospitality community, and just the community at large stepped up. So we do big events well. We have a great market, and the NFL acknowledged that we did an outstanding job.
Bagley says it may be another 5 years before a formal bid has to be assembled.
So, when they had the Super Bowl in Minnesota, I don't know what it's like at other Super Bowls, but it's cold as fuck in Minnesota, and they spent all this money putting up these venues and places where bands can play, and like they're just open all the time. And I was walking down there all weekend, and I never saw anyone outside. You don't see anyone outside. They just came in, they drank in their hotel room, then went out to the bars at night. That was about it.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Viking, with a custom-built Ocean Fleet offering a small ship experience, all veranda staterooms, and a shore excursion included in every port. Dedicated to bringing the traveler closer to the destination. VikingCruises.com. And the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, bridging science and the arts by supporting Please Continue, part of LA Theater Works' Relativity series of science audio plays, or at sloan.org.
This is Morning Edition from NPR News. I'm David Green.
I'm Rachel Martin.
And I'm Noelle King. So far, 2 Republicans have announced their intention to run for their party's nomination against President Trump. One of those contenders, former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, declared his candidacy last weekend. At least 2 others are reportedly considering doing the same. Former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford and former Arizona Senator Jeff Flake. Now, to be clear, they are all long shots. But before any of those potential primary challengers came into the picture, there was Bill Weld, who announced way back in April. Weld is a former Libertarian vice presidential candidate and the former governor of Massachusetts. He talked to us from a studio in Boston.
I've actually wanted to be president for a long time, and I've worked in both the House and the Senate and the executive branch and been a 2-term governor.
Every party.
And, I have an idea for what works and what doesn't, and I think I could start Monday in the job. Number 1, I would balance the budget. I was rated the most fiscally conservative governor in the United States in office. And number 2, I would reverse the president's policies in many international areas, starting with the Paris Climate Accords, but going on to all the treaties that he's ripped up.
You may not like the president's policies, but according to Real Clear Politics, according to their polling numbers, President Trump has the support of 81.3% of registered Republican voters. Can you really get him on policy?
Yeah, I think it's entirely possible. The Trump Organization in every one of the 50 states is the state Republican Party now. So if you poll that type of voter, you should get 100% support. The New Hampshire primary is the first in the nation primary, and it has outsized weight and punch. And many times presidents have been running for re-election, and they've faced a primary opponent in New Hampshire none of whom has yet won that primary, but they got, 30%, 40%, and that knocked the president right out. It's happened 5 times, and every time a president has had an opponent within his own party, and they're all his, that president has gone on to lose the general election.
Do you want to win the presidency, or do you just want to deal the president a blow in New Hampshire?
Oh, no, I want to win, and now it's very obvious what has to be done. We have to totally reverse direction from the president's disastrous approach internationally of insulting our allies and cozying up to dictators. He's hollowed out the Departments of State and Defense and Homeland Security, and all those, not all, but many of those people are in an acting capacity. One thing I can tell you about Washington, D.C. is that if you have the word acting in front of your name, you have no authority to get anything done. And I think the president likes that because it means there's a power vacuum, and so that power redounds back to the Oval Office.
Let me ask you for your stance on a very big and important social issue. Do you support abortion rights?
I've been pro-choice since day one, and if I may say so, I think that recently, in backing the statutes passed in Alabama, Georgia, and some other states, saying that there are no exceptions for rape or incest, that abortion is totally outlawed, I think the president and those who support those statutes are taking the side of rapists over the side of women.
This position will not endear you to many conservatives who view abortion as a really core issue. How do you plan on dealing with that?
My job in New Hampshire and elsewhere, obviously, is to expand the circle of those who vote in the Republican primary beyond the Republican Party bosses, and to include as many millennials as possible, as many women as possible. And I mean all women. I'm not just saying suburban, moderate women voters. These recent statutes and the plan that the president and his allies have in mind for abortion, it's a throwback to the Stone Age. It's not even a throwback to 100 years ago.
The Washington Post recently wrote that you are not a, quote, take the ramparts kind of orator, and yet you want to take on President Trump. And I wonder, do you think that his charisma, his ability to draw people in, presents a challenge to you?
If Mr. Trump continues to act in the way he has been, you may see me become a take the ramparts orator.
Given what we now know about President Trump's actions, should he be subject to impeachment proceedings?
Absolutely. The Mueller report section
NPR
on obstruction of
loves
justice made it clear that Mr. Trump has ordered people to falsify documents in order to obstruct an investigation. And this is not nobody. This is the Director of National Intelligence and senior national security officials and his own lawyers.
Former Governor Bill Weld challenging President Trump for the Republican primary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Bill Weld is an NPR conservative. I'm financially conservative, but literally liberal on everything else. He made a joke about people being acting attorney generals, how they don't have the position, so they don't have any authority. For him to make a comment about acting, that motherfucker ran for Libertarian vice president. Talk about real acting. He's a conservative, and yet he wants to get back into the Paris Climate Accord, and he wants to bring us back into government top-down economics, which is what that agreement led to. It's the reason why I have a Ford Focus. It's shit like that is the reason why my transmission's fucked up, because they had to put a computer in to shift for me. In order to hit these regulations, and now I've had it worked on 3 times. The emission standards and bullshit like that. Bill Weld is not you would best call him a classical liberal. He's best a classical liberal. He's not conservative in any sense. He's also a classical fuck. He ruined the Gary Johnson, who ran for Libertarian president. Bill Weld just ruined his presidency chances. If I'm not mistaken, he talked well about Hillary Clinton and the Clintons. It's like Bill Weld does not deserve to be on any program. He's a non-story, but NPR, that is the conservative they want to see. That is what they want to project as conservatism. It's conservatism. That is something they're comfortable with. That is what they're going to show. Just like I said yesterday, where they will bring on someone who's, conservative, and then they're going to talk about all their liberal standing points. Guys, I'm going to smoke a cigarette. It was an interesting drive this morning. I thought I was going to get pulled over there for a second. Definitely was going a little too fast on the interstate there. But hey, if you're listening to this, give me a like, share, subscribe. The sun was in my face all fucking morning, and I don't know what I did with my sunglasses. Oh, gotta go buy another pair of sunglasses. But hey, thanks for watching, and I will see you later on today.